Let me take a moment to think about something most people never do. Think about the last time you checked your bank account and felt genuinely at peace. Not just relieved that rent cleared. Not just grateful nothing bounced. Actually at peace. The kind of quiet confidence that comes from really knowing that money is working for you, even while you sleep. Most people reading this have never felt that. And I want you to sit with that for just a second, because it matters. It matters more than anything I'm going to tell you today. Here is the truth that nobody in your life is going to say out loud. One income stream is a vulnerability. It is not a plan. It is not security. It is a single thread holding everything you've built, your family's comfort, your kids' future, your retirement, your dignity. And one phone call, one layoff notice, one health scare, one economic downturn can cut that thread completely. And just like that, everything you worked for starts to unravel. Now, I'm not telling you this to frighten you. I'm telling you this because the people who built lasting wealth, the ones who retired with choices instead of regrets, they understood this truth early enough to do something about it. The question is whether you do too. So let's talk honestly. Let's talk about income. Multiple income streams, 7 of them specifically. And let's talk about how you can begin building them without quitting your job, without gambling your savings, and without pretending you have time you don't have. Because here's what I've learned over decades of watching people build wealth and watching people lose it. The biggest financial mistake isn't investing in the wrong thing. It's waiting. It's the quiet, comfortable assumption that next year will be the right time to start. Next year, when the kids are a little older. Next year, when the car is paid off. Next year, when work settles down. Next year has a way of becoming a decade. I know a man, I'll call him Robert, who spent 31 years at the same company. Good man, hard worker. He told me once that he planned to figure out the money stuff after his last kid graduated. That was the plan. And when that day came, his company announced a restructuring. At 54 years old, Robert found himself starting over. No side income, no investments of any real consequence, just a severance package and a resume he hadn't updated since the Clinton administration. Robert isn't unusual. Robert is the rule, not the exception. And here's the part that stings. He had the income to start earlier. He just didn't have the urgency. Because urgency only arrives when the comfortable option disappears. Don't wait for urgency. Build before you need to. Now let's get into this properly. When we talk about multiple income streams, a lot of people imagine something complicated, something that requires a finance degree or a trust fund or connections they don't have. And that misunderstanding keeps people exactly where they are. So I want to strip this down to its honest core. A second income stream doesn't have to be dramatic. It just has to exist. The first stream, and the one that quietly makes more millionaires than almost anything else, is dividend income from stocks. This is not exciting. I want to be clear about that. Dividend investing is about as glamorous as watching paint dry. But that's almost the point. Real wealth rarely looks like what people expect. Here is how it works in plain language. You buy shares in companies that pay their shareholders a portion of their profits on a regular basis, usually every quarter. The company makes money. It shares a slice of that money with you simply because you own a piece of it. And if you reinvest those dividends, if you take that payment and use it to buy more shares, you begin something that the mathematics of finance calls compounding. Albert Einstein, depending on who you ask, allegedly called it the 8th wonder of the world. Whether he said it or not, the concept is real. And it is ruthless in your favor when time is on your side. If you're 35 years old and you put $500 a month into dividend-paying stocks, reinvesting everything, you will look at your account balance at 65 and genuinely not believe the number. Not because anything magical happened, because time happened. Because patience happened. Because you didn't panic and sell in 2008 or 2020 or whatever the next crisis turns out to be, which brings me to the second stream. And the psychological challenge that comes with it. Index fund investing, broad market participation, owning a small piece of hundreds of companies at once, riding the long-term growth of the American economy rather than trying to pick winners. I have watched intelligent people, genuinely smart, educated people, talk themselves out of index fund investing because it felt too simple, too boring. They wanted a story. They wanted to find the next great company before anyone else did. And that impulse, that very human impulse, cost them dearly in 2020 when the market dropped nearly 40% in a matter of weeks. I watched people sell everything, and I understood why. It felt rational. The news was terrifying. The future felt genuinely uncertain. But the people who didn't just hold but actually bought more during that drop, those people recovered, and then some within 18 months. The market always looks dangerous in the middle of the storm. It only looks obvious in hindsight. Fear-based selling is one of the most expensive financial habits a person can have, and yet almost everyone does it at least once. If you can train yourself, genuinely discipline yourself to hold positions in broad index funds through downturns, you are already doing something that the majority of investors fail to do. That discipline, not genius, is the real edge. Now let's talk about the third stream. Because this one surprises people. Real estate, not necessarily buying a rental property, although that's on the list and we'll get there, but starting smaller. Starting with a real estate investment trust, what's commonly called a REIT. This is a company that owns income-producing real estate. Apartments, shopping centers, office buildings, storage facilities, and by law must distribute at least 90% of its taxable income to shareholders. In other words, you can own a piece of commercial real estate, collect regular income from it, and never unclog a single drain. You don't manage tenants. You don't deal with maintenance calls at 2 in the morning. You buy shares the same way you'd buy any stock, and the income flows. Is it as lucrative as owning the building outright? No. Is it far more accessible and far less complicated? Yes. And for someone just beginning to diversify their income, accessible and manageable beats theoretical and overwhelming every single time. The fourth stream is something I want to spend a little more time on because it sits at the intersection of what you already know and what you haven't monetized yet. That stream is knowledge, skills, expertise, information packaged and delivered in a way that earns without your constant presence. Think about what you know. Not what you were formally trained in necessarily, but what you actually know. What problems have you solved repeatedly that other people struggle with? What did it take you years to figure out that someone else would pay to learn faster? A woman I know spent 20 years in human resources, hiring, performance reviews, workplace conflict, building teams. She knew that world cold. At 47, she started creating online resources, practical guides, templates, short courses, built around the things junior HR professionals were constantly getting wrong. Within 2 years, she had an income stream from that knowledge that covered her car payment every month. Then her mortgage contribution. It didn't happen overnight. It happened because she started and she kept going. You don't need to be a celebrity. You don't need 1 million followers. You need depth of knowledge, genuine usefulness, and the willingness to start before you feel ready. The fifth income stream is the one that feels most tangible to most people, and that's rental income from physical property. Now, I'm not going to oversimplify this. Owning rental property is a business. It requires capital to enter, it requires management, and it comes with real risks. Vacancies, repairs, difficult tenants, market downturns in local real estate. Anyone who tells you it's purely passive income has never owned a rental property. But, and this is important, it is also one of the most reliable long-term wealth builders in American financial history. Real estate over time tends to appreciate. Meanwhile, the tenant is effectively paying down the mortgage. And if you select wisely, the right market, the right property, the right price point, the monthly cash flow after expenses can become a genuinely meaningful income stream. The key is to approach it like a business owner, not like a gambler. You run the numbers before you fall in love with the property. You leave emotion out of the analysis. You understand your local market. And you start with one property, manage it well, learn from it, and then decide whether to expand. The sixth stream is one that technology has made more accessible than at any point in history. Lending your money directly to individuals or businesses through platforms designed for exactly that purpose. Peer-to-peer lending, private notes, or so simply holding bonds, you become the lender rather than the borrower, and you collect interest income in return. This carries risk as any investment does. But when structured properly, when you diversify across many loans rather than concentrating in one, the interest income can be meaningful and it operates entirely separately from the stock market, which gives your overall financial picture something valuable: independence between income sources. Diversification across streams matters as much as diversification within them. You don't want all 7 of your income streams to collapse at the same time. You want them built from different foundations responding to different economic conditions, so that when one is struggling, others are holding steady. And that brings me to the 7th stream, which may be the simplest of all to begin, and which most people dismiss precisely because of that simplicity. It's high-yield savings and money market accounts, maximizing the return on the cash you're already holding. I know, that doesn't sound impressive. But here's the mindset shift I want you to make. Every dollar sitting in a regular checking account earning nothing or nearly nothing is a dollar working against you. Inflation is a quiet thief. It doesn't announce itself. It just slowly reduces what your money can buy while you're not paying attention. Moving your emergency fund, your near-term savings, your cash reserves into vehicles that are yielding meaningful interest, that is income. Not spectacular income, but income. And combined with the other 6 streams, it's income that adds up. Now here's where I want to get honest with you, because we've talked about what these 7 streams are, and that's useful. But the conversation that actually changes lives isn't about the mechanics. It's about the psychology. Most people know in some general sense that they should be investing. Most people know they should have multiple income sources. They've heard it, they've nodded along to articles about it, and then they've gone back to their lives and done nothing materially different. Why? Because starting feels like a statement. It feels like commitment. And commitment, when you're uncertain about the future, feels risky. So people choose the comfort of inaction and dress it up as caution. They tell themselves they're being careful. They're waiting for the right moment. They're still learning. But caution and inaction are not the same thing. Real caution means understanding the risk and proceeding thoughtfully. Inaction disguised as caution is just fear with better vocabulary. I want to tell you about another person. I'll call her Diana. Diana was a school teacher, middle school science. She made decent money, not extraordinary, but enough. For years, she told herself that investing was for people with more to invest. She'd start when she had a real cushion, when she felt more prepared, when life was a little more settled. At 42, her husband had a serious health scare. They got through it, thank God, but the medical bills were significant and the experience left Diana genuinely shaken. Not just about health, about money, about the fragility of a single income household dependent on 2 jobs with no backup. She started that year. She opened a brokerage account with what she described to me as an embarrassingly small amount. She began investing in index funds. She moved her savings to a high-yield account. She read everything she could about dividend investing. Slowly, consistently, month after month, she built. Diana is 59 now. She won't tell me the exact number, but she told me recently that she wouldn't have believed it possible at 42. She didn't have a windfall. She didn't inherit anything. She had time, and she used it. She started. The most expensive investment mistake in America isn't buying the wrong stock. It's not starting. Now, I want to speak directly to the part of you that's listening, but already building objections. I don't have enough to invest meaningfully. I have too much debt. I don't understand this well enough yet. I don't have time. These are real constraints. I'm not dismissing them. But here is what I know. They are almost never as absolute as they feel. And the answer to most of them isn't perfect conditions. It's beginning with what you have, where you are, and improving from there. You don't need to open 7 income streams simultaneously. Nobody does. You start with one. You get comfortable with it. You understand what you own and why you own it. Then you add another. This is not a race. It's a construction project. You're building something that will outlast your working years, and things built to last take time. Patience is not a passive quality. It is an active discipline. Every month you choose to keep investing when markets are falling, you are making an active choice. Every month you resist moving money from your brokerage account to cover a want rather than a need, you are exercising a muscle. These choices, made repeatedly over years, are what separate people who retire with dignity from people who retire with fear. Emotional control in investing cannot be overstated. And the reason it's so difficult is that the market is designed not maliciously but structurally to make emotional responses feel rational. When stocks are rising, buying more feels like wisdom. When they're falling, selling feels like prudence. But both of those feelings, followed without discipline, lead to the same outcome: buying high and selling low, the exact opposite of what works. The antidote is simple, but not easy. It's a written plan. It's predetermined rules. It's knowing in advance what you will do in a downturn so that fear doesn't get to make the decision in the moment. Because fear is a terrible financial advisor. It has never once, in all of recorded history, called the bottom correctly. I want to address something else before we close, because it comes up every time this conversation happens. People ask, isn't this only possible if you start young? No. It is better if you start young, dramatically better. Time is the variable that separates ordinary returns from extraordinary ones. But the second best time to start is now, regardless of age. A 50-year-old who begins building multiple income streams today will be in a materially better position at 65 than a 50-year-old who decides it's too late. The math doesn't care about your age. It cares about the time you give it. And there are income streams on this list that don't require decades to bear fruit. Rental income can cash flow from month 1 if structured correctly. Knowledge-based income can begin generating revenue within months of starting. High-yield savings begin working the day you move the money. You don't have to wait for compounding to help you. You just have to begin. Here is the mindset shift I want to leave you with. Stop thinking about money as something you earn and spend. Start thinking about it as something you build and deploy. Every dollar that passes through your hands has a choice. It can leave and never come back, or it can be put to work and begin sending reinforcements. Every dollar you invest is hiring a small, tireless worker who never sleeps, never calls in sick, never asks for a raise, and will work for you for as long as you let it. The goal, the real long-term goal, is to eventually have enough of those workers that their combined output covers your life. That's what financial independence actually means. It's not about being wealthy in the flashy sense. It's about having choices. About never being forced to stay somewhere you don't want to be just because you need the paycheck. That kind of freedom changes everything. It changes how you show up at work because you're there by choice. It changes how you sleep because the foundation is solid. It changes what you model for the people who are watching you. Your children, your younger colleagues, anyone in your life who needs to see that this is possible for people who look like them and live like them. You are not going to build 7 income streams this week. That's not the takeaway. The takeaway is this. You're going to pick one. You're going to understand it. You're going to start. And then with the quiet stubbornness of someone who has decided that their future is worth the effort, you're going to keep going, not because the market will always cooperate. It won't. Not because the path will always be clear. It rarely is. But because the alternative, one income, one thread, one phone call away from everything changing, is no longer acceptable to you. The most powerful financial decision you will ever make is the decision to take your financial future seriously. Not someday. Not next year. Now that's where it starts. That's always where it starts. One honest decision made today that the person you want to be tomorrow will be grateful for. The thread is in your hand. The question is whether you let someone else hold it or whether you start weaving something stronger.